Hello, everybody. Welcome to Julie's Unknown Podcast. This is season 3. And in this season, things are going to be a little bit different. I am so excited to bringing in a wide range of guest speakers on this podcast. And today we have the lovely Shauna Lay. I have met Shauna through, well, there's going to be a lot of the speakers here. We've all met through the same areas, but through Melanie and Lair. And we connected in one of Melanie's programs, and I am just so grateful to have her here talk about different themes and topics around, building a business, unconventional approaches, and her experiences, and also like my experiences. So it is going to be a nice, beautiful conversation. Can't wait to dive in. Shauna, would you love to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Shauna Lay, as Julie has already spoken about. I am a empowerment women's coach, and I help healers as well as entrepreneurs. And in my work, it's kind of this is one of my friends said to me, "This is what you do. You take my purse and you pour it out onto the table, and it's all on the table, and you take." The pieces that are working and you put them back into my purse. And then the pieces that are not working, you put in a little pile. And then the things that I no longer need, you throw away. And then we start to work with the things that are not working, but still belong in the purse. And I thought that that was a really sweet way of describing my work in kind of, in a metaphorical terms. And so no matter what you come to me with, I have an ability to really sift through and look for the things that are really important that need to be worked on. It's almost like when I'm in my work, there's a highlight, like it's somebody speaking about something there, there's a highlighter. And so I know right away, like, oh, we need to look at that. We need to talk about that. And so I do a lot of work around changing patterns in people's lives so that when they're moving from where they used to be or the story that they used to tell themselves to this new place or new story they want to tell themselves, I help them guide them to get there.
I love that. And I love that metaphor. That metaphor is so beautiful. It's because there is certain aspects in our business where they're not working, but they still belong. And it's sometimes it's a pivot or a tweak. It's not completely throw it out. And as I think that in this day and age, as like business owners, when we're like, okay, it's not working, like toss it, like, or we need to do something drastic to change it. And it's just sometimes it's not. It's that slight shift of like that 1 degree of like either looking at it from a different direction or doing something different or looking within yourself. So, and then all it takes is that, and then the change just ripples out.
Yeah, and I really look at it as there's a difference between what we want and who we're meant to be. And sometimes we get the discernment between those two is really difficult because we think we want something when we actually don't want that thing. It's we want it because it's shiny, we want it because somebody else has it, and we think like, oh, look at them. So there's some confusion. Is this meant for me? Or do I just want this because someone else has this or it's shiny? And so those things that don't belong are the things that I'm really looking for that somebody doesn't actually want, but thinks they want. So it's in the purse. They think they want it, but it doesn't belong. It's actually not meant for them. And so those things that aren't working are still meant for them. The things that are they are true to who they are. They are things that they want, but it's not working. And so we work with those things to make them work so that because they're still in alignment with who we are. And that's the thing that I think is really important and really beautiful about being a human is that we are striving for things, we're wanting things, and especially as we know in our business, because we're coaching people to get what they want. And so have what they want, whatever that is. And so it's really a discernment of, is this meant for you? And then we can let go of the things that are no longer meant for them. And that's really helpful.
And I love that you brought that up because that is something I've experienced not only in myself, but other people, like other people's projections. It could be projections or other people's idea of what they think they want. In my 20s, I traveled a lot. And I used to have a lot of friends just tell me, like, oh, I wish I can do what you do. And in my mind, I'm like, you can. But then it goes back to that question, do you really want it? Or are you just afraid? And like, if you don't want it, then, let it go. But if you do really want it, what is the fear? What is the thought, the beliefs behind it as to why you can't do it? And so I had that happen so much. And at first I was young. I wasn't much into self-development at that time. And I'm like, I don't get it. I'm like, you can just book your flight, book your hotel. What's the big deal? And
Yeah.
it was just, I did feel like one of the like rarest people like in my group of friends at that time because I was the only one who was doing this. I was the only one who was like, okay, like summer's here, like let me go travel, let me save my money so I can go to Europe, go to Australia, go do this. And the people I was surrounded by, they weren't. They were just, staying at home and, working, and that's okay. That was their path. But to have that come, telling me that, oh, I wish I could do what you did. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome. And I'm like, oh, well, you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? Absolutely. And I think that just goes back to, the choices that we make. I always say, whenever I'm in my work with my clients, one of the things I say to them is you can choose whatever you want to choose, and nothing is wrong. Like you can choose this and you can choose this. You get to decide what it is that you're doing. And so it's the same for you in what you were just making a choice. And like you said, anybody could make that choice. And, to have the projection, I wish I could do that. It doesn't feel really good when you're in the choice of doing what you're doing when someone says, well, I wish I could do that, as though you're doing something that is, not possible. And that, I think that doesn't it feels like in your instance there was a bit of judgment. And I think that that is part of what we talked about when we connected, of the kind of the unconventional choices that we choose, and how we can have a lot of judgment for those unconventional choices because they are different from the majority. Like you said, the majority of my friends were doing this and I was doing this, and that is unconventional. And we get a lot of judgment for doing those sort of unconventional, have, choosing those unconventional things.
Yeah, and I was wondering about your story. Like I just shared one example, and for you, what is one of the most, I guess, one of the most unconventional things you've done where you did get a little bit of judgment, where you did get a little bit of, like, oh, why is she doing it? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a lot of that. But since we're speaking mostly about business, I'll speak to the business side of things. So when I was in college, I studied mechanical engineering. And the reason why I studied mechanical engineering, like truthfully, really, was because I knew that I didn't want to do a conventional job. I knew I didn't want to work in corporate America. And so and I knew that if I could prove to myself that I could get through an engineering degree, then I could do whatever I wanted. There was like this way that if I could do this, then I could choose anything and be successful at it. That was proving to myself. And I also really loved math. So I was, certainly engineering was the path that was correct for my mind and for who I am. And so I chose that, and I was able to finish it and get through it. I got a mechanical engineering degree, and as soon as I was done, I traveled to Costa Rica with a bunch of my friends. We traveled for 6 weeks, and when I was in Costa Rica, I debated staying in Costa Rica and never coming home. Um, and I knew that when I was there, that if I came home, which I did, that I would do something different, that I wouldn't do engineering. And at the time I was also studying yoga. And so I decided that I was going to be a yoga teacher. But so when I got home, this is what I did. I was like, I'm going to be a yoga teacher and I'm not going to do engineering. And my parents were very disturbed by this. Because they had just put me through college, 5 years of college, paid for it. And so they didn't understand why I wouldn't at least try engineering. And so I did because I felt like there was a little bit of feeling of being sort of indebted to them because they had put me through college that I felt like I did need to try. So side by side, I studied yoga and taught yoga and did engineering. And even working in corporate as an engineer, never did. I always taught yoga. So I would take my lunches, long lunches, so that I could go teach yoga. There was always a aspect of me not really committing to fully to engineering because I knew that one day I was done. And I would walk into these boardrooms with these big, men. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with men. I love men, but it was boring and really dry. And I knew that I didn't belong. I just kept walking in there and be like, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. And finally, when my husband and I were able to bring in enough money with my yoga teaching career and his career, that was when I stopped doing engineering, which was probably like, I don't know, 10, 12, something like that years ago.
Wow. Wow. And I love that. And I find when we do find ourselves in these spaces of unconventionality and taking these paths that sometimes don't make sense to everybody else, there is a certain amount of things for us to hold, like, because you're holding everybody else's feelings about your decision. You're holding yourself through it because you're saying, this is what I really want to do. And I love that you brought in the, your parents and how they supported you through the, like school and everything. And so how were you able to hold all of that? Like, what was some of the things that you did at that time to hold that space for, their thoughts and feelings around it, and then also yourself going through it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have this ability to be able to take into consideration everybody's feelings. And I think in that time, I just realized that they made a sacrifice for me, and they were they weren't demanding, but they were sort of requesting to try it. And I think that that was where it would be different. I think if they had demanded, I might have rebelled, but it wasn't really a demand. It was more of a request of, we think you should at least try and see what happens. And so I think that I'm able to look at that and be like, okay, I will do that. Like I can do that. Why not? And I can also do what I want to do at the same time. And I think that it's a skill that I almost feel like I've always had because I'm trying to think about like, was there a time when I really developed that skill or practiced that skill? And it's hard for me to really be like, that's the thing. And this is where I learned this. It almost feels like it was always innate in me. And I do it also with my children. So as a family, we always look at, like, if we're going on vacation, it's like, what do you want to do? What do I want to do? What does dad want to do? We're looking, I'm always looking because I tend to be the vacation planner. I'm always looking at what everybody wants. And then I'm inserting something it's not like we're all going to do what I want to do. We're all going to do what dad wants to do. It's like there's pieces of it that we're going to do throughout the entire vacation that are going to make everybody happy at some point. And I think, in life, we just don't always get to do what we want to do. That just doesn't work. We're in relationship with people. And when we relate to people in a healthy and good way, we have to take them into consideration. And so I just think that that's what I was doing at that time. I was taking them into consideration. Now, the issue that I really had that I did have to work on was when I would get judgment. Like my entire family thought that I was in a cult when I was teaching and doing yoga. So I would hide in my room by myself and not let anybody know. I didn't ever take pictures of myself doing yoga. And at the time there was no yoga there was not yoga supply stores all over the place. There wasn't yoga pants in Target. None of that was going on. And so it wasn't a widespread known practice like it is now. Now it's no big deal. At the time, it was a big deal. And so I had to really work with those judgments and just consistently go back to what is it that I want? Who am I? Who am I meant to be? I remember thinking all the time as I was teaching yoga and going through this, like, this is me. Because when I was younger, I knew I was like, oh, I want to be a doctor or like heal people. I used to say that all the time. So I knew that this was the right route for me to go, that this was actually true to who I was. And it felt really good. In my heart, the mind was like, oh gosh, everyone's judging. They think I'm in a cult, da, 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 da. Oh gosh, am I doing something wrong? But my heart, when I would drop into my heart space, it was like, nope, this is exactly where you need to be. This is exactly what you need to be doing. And that is consistently the tool that I'm using, consistently dropping, okay, there's all these stories going on, but like, what's true to me? Like, what is my heart sharing with me? What does my heart want? And so that's the tool that I consistently used.
And I resonate with that tool as well, because that is something I've used over and over. Because when I first did my coaching certification, coaching was not a thing. And I'm sure you remember this time period where coaching was not even a thing. And I remember telling people like, they'll ask me what I'm doing, whether it was while I was doing my coaching certificate or after. And I'm like, I'm a coach. I'm a life coach. They're like, what is a life coach? Or how can you be a life coach? You're only like 30. What do you know about life? And I would get these comments and I had to sit there, and sometimes, the mind gets in the way. The mind goes, like, well, if people are not accepting this, like, how am I going to make it? How am I, like, how am I going to help people? Like, the idea is I want to help and heal people. But if everybody's like just shutting me down, then that's just not allowing me to help them. And that was like the story my mind was saying. But in my like heart, it was like, no, this is it. Like every time I had a session, every time, like, something I would talk about these topics, I would just light up like a Christmas tree. And I had to remind myself, like, trust the process. Like, this is it. And then throughout the years, then now it's more like, depending on who I'm speaking to, but on the most part is like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what it is. Or they have an idea, like, and whether that idea is exactly what I do or not, they still kind of have more of an acceptance. Whereas before it was a complete shutdown resistance. And it was just like, well, what is that? What do you mean? What's a life coach? Like, and it was just like people just couldn't process that word. And then how do you explain it? Because it's not really like therapy, and it's not like you're going to see a psychologist. It's different. But sometimes I would struggle to, in the past, to explain to people what it is. And I think that was something with my confidence as well that I needed to build and work on and look at myself, the work I was doing on me, the work I was doing with my clients. And through there, I started kind of bridging more examples to explain it to them. But it was in the beginning, I remember it was just, people just didn't get it. They did not get it. And so I relate to that as well, like in when you were starting the yoga practice, and not many people at the time were doing it.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly what you were kind of talking about when you were talking about also traveling, when everybody else was sitting at home and you were traveling. When we create these unconventional paths, people don't understand it. You are creating something that doesn't quite yet exist in the popularity of society or of the masses. And when you do that, there's going to be questioning, there's going to be misunderstanding, there's going to be judgment. And we, as humans who are paving paths that are new, have to be able to deal with that. It's part of it. It's always going to be part of it. And our ancestors were paving paths for us. They were getting judgment from people who were paving paths for us. All of us humans are getting some kind of judgment or projections being thrown at us, but specifically if we're paving new paths that are not popular. And it can feel really difficult. And I think that's why in this industry, not everybody makes it, because you have to have resiliency in order to be able to deal with that. And then there are those that do. And because they have resiliency and because they can be like, okay, no, this is what I'm doing. I feel so strong about this. This is exactly what I'm meant to be doing. And I'm not going to waver, maybe a little bit, but I'm going to stay true to what I want and what I know and what's real for me. There is there is so much spiritual growth just in that process. And that is why I think so many of us say this is such a spiritual practice, because you're consistently having to stay true to yourself. You're consistently having to come back to what is it that I want? What's true for me? How do I want to live my life? And it's not that we don't waver. I totally waver. Sometimes I do things that I'm like, that's not really me. That's not really what I wanted. But to consistently be able to come back to the center, come back to who we are, and to stay true to that path is just a beautiful, beautiful practice, and a practice of, I think, creating a really magical human.
Yeah. And it is a constant reflecting, constant going in, constant shifting, relearning. And even I experienced it recently as well, like because it is so unconventional, because also there is in in the entrepreneurship world, especially the coaching world, there's no clear path because it's you. You're selling you. You're selling yourself. It's not, oh, here's this like beautiful mug. And this is why it's different than everybody else. This is what I'm going to do, how I'm going to market it, how I'm going to make it different, and this and that. It's a product. And I find sometimes it's easy, like I want to say quote unquote easiest with a product because it's something physical. And, you find something that unique thing that nobody else has. And, you do the marketing, you do the research. Not saying that you cannot do that in the coaching industry, but it's a different approach because it's yourself. And that's what makes it so unconventional and why you need, as you said, that resiliency to continue to go, to continue to like go inward and like what it is to shift. And a few days ago, like I had the feeling, I was like, oh, I just want to throw the towel. And then I was like, whoa, where did this thought come from? And I had to sit and work through that, work through that in myself. But the amount of times that I felt of throwing the towel because the mind focuses on what's not working when there's so many other things that are, but the mind is like, oh, yeah, but this and that, or it's not what you
Mm-hmm.
want it to look like. And then constantly taking that unconventional approach. For me, a lot of the things that business coaches say to do with your business have not worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm constantly trying to pave my own path, do something different. Like, don't,
Mm-hmm.
do that, like what is not the norm, because that's the only way I know. Because the minute I try to copy
Mm-hmm.
like someone else's strategy, it
Mm-hmm.
flops. So it's almost like this industry is meant to be unconventional on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you brought this up. And I think that when you first started talking about you're selling yourself, the thing about that is that then you have to really get to know yourself. In order to sell yourself, you have to know yourself. So when you were saying like the mug, well, the mug is not multifaceted. It's pretty simple, to get to know. But we are not simple humans. And so to get to know ourselves, it takes time, it takes attention, it takes a lot of focus. And so also when you then say, a lot of the business coaches that I've worked with, what they say for me to do doesn't work. That's because parts of it are not meant for you. And so it's great to work with coaches to identify what does work for me, what doesn't work for me. So, like I always say, 5 steps doesn't work for all of us ever. So, if you hear anybody say these are the 5 steps to something, okay, whatever. That's not going to work for everybody, you know? I mean, I great that it's great for marketing purposes and because that's what humans want. We want the answer. Like, oh, here's the answer. I'm going to go do this and then it's going to solve all of my problems. But that's actually not what's true. What's true is that we have to look at ourselves. We have to get to know ourselves. We have to understand what does work for us and what doesn't. And so if you're working with a business coach, there may be aspects of it that you've drawn from that do work for you. And then there's these other aspects that don't work for you. It's again like the purse. You know, you put the purse out. This doesn't work for me. This does work for me. These are the things that I know will work for me, but I need to work on them. It's the same analogy. And so I think what's important is that we consistently are coming back to who am I, what works for me, what represents me as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and how can I deliver that message in a very authentic and real way. So I think the more that we get to know ourselves, the easier it is to market ourselves. And you also said that you've learned about yourself through your coaching and what you do. And that's exactly right. Like we learn about ourselves through our clients. So we get as much out of our work with our clients as they get out of the work with us because we get to really get to know who we are and what we're good at and how we work. And that's how, at least how I create programs is based on what I'm learning within working with my clients.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a big one that you brought up, and because it is sometimes in the sessions with the clients, but for me is I guide them in a way like I didn't realize I could guide them because it's all intuitive. Like I personally, and I don't know if this is the same for you, I don't go in with a full-blown plan. Kind of like the podcast. Like I go in with an intention. I'm in a client session, I'll go in maybe with like two, three, prompts, 3 questions, just for my ego, like for my human self to feel a little bit prepared, just in case something happens and I just need to, go and kind of get to like, oh, okay, I can ask that question. And honestly, it's never happened. I've never actually like used it, but it's just a safety net for myself. And then in that session, I just go intuitively and I listen to the client and I listen to what they say. And then next thing you know, I'm asking these questions, I'm guiding them in a way, and I'm like, where did this person come from? And then all of a sudden I'm making all these realizations like, oh, okay, like I can guide in this way. Like this is some of the things on how I help people. And you learn like your own little way about yourself of how you can help others. And it's so cool to witness yourself. And sometimes I'll go back if I remember like that there was a powerful session. I'll go back and re-listen to it because I'm like, what did I say? I know I said some powerful shit, but I totally forgot because you're
Mm-hmm.
just like intuitively channeling it
Mm-hmm.
through in that moment. And the
Mm-hmm.
energy is like, it's just going. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're like, whoa, what happened? And
Yes.
I love those so much.
Yes, I love this. It's so true. I resonate with you a lot. And I think that we have teachings that we have developed within ourselves that we know are true from that come from us that we share on a regular basis. So somebody might have some experience that they're dealing with that I'm like, oh, I've seen that. I know this one. I will be like, oh, I know this one. I know this one. I've seen this one before within myself, within many of my clients. And so there'll be a standard teaching that I have that I know. And then there'll be times, which what you're talking about, where it's like out of the blue. I'll say something and be like, oh, well, that's new. I don't know that one. And it might be an experience that I know, but what's coming through as a coach, as I'm coaching them, is something that I haven't even heard myself say. And that's when I know that like new wisdom is coming through. Something new is coming through. And so I always pay really close attention to that because and I can also feel like, oh, and I don't have it quite yet. Like I might stumble over my words or I might not quite see it clearly. And so it'll be coming through, but I'm like, oh, I can't actually see it really clearly. And then when I speak it out, oh, I'm not speaking very clearly on this. And so then I know like, oh, this is a learning that I'm also experiencing in the moment, in this exact moment. And then over time, I get to see it more clearly. It's so magical, right? Because it's like, it's just, it feels to me like that's my growth, that there's my growth edge, that's where I'm at, that's the learning that I'm now in. And one day it will be like a teaching, it'll be quick, I'll know it really well, it'll be part of my teachings, and then I will be in another place where I'm learning something new. And or it might be like an upgrade from a teaching that I have had before. That also happens where it's like, here's this teaching that I have, but now it's being upgraded and I'm learning something new about that specific teaching.
I love that. And I love the way you phrased it and the way you kind of put it to words. It was very beautiful because it was a process for me from the beginning of my coaching journey to now. And even this pops up is that sometimes I don't have the answer, or sometimes I need a minute to sit with like what the client's bringing up and to allow that compassion with myself, to not always know, to not always have an answer, to not always have the perfect coaching question to ask, to not, and to say, in front of the client, like, give me a moment, let me sit through this. And sometimes it comes within the session and sometimes it comes after. And to honestly express it and be like, I'm going to sit with this a little more. I'll get back to you in the next session because, you've stumped me. And I've had it where I've been stumped. I've been stumped in client sessions. I've been stumped in like my in-person workshops as well. Like when they ask, like when the people, you have a group of people and they ask certain questions and I'm like, and allowing to hold myself and take the time that you don't have the, like, those teachings, like, that them in and out and they just come out. Allow it to come through and that you are human and that, you are multifaceted and that you're not going to be perfect and that you will figure something out. You will learn something about yourself, something about this experience, and to just allow that to be. And I feel in the beginning, there was just I put so much pressure on myself to have the answer, to, to be that amazing coach for someone. And now the more I realize, the more it's like, no, I'm just perfectly imperfect, just like everybody else. And sometimes I will get stumped and sometimes I will not know, and it'll throw me off. But every time I get thrown off now, I'm like, oh, I'm learning something new.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's the couple things that come up for me as you're speaking. One is that I think it's really okay to be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. If somebody asks you a question and you're like, I don't know. I actually don't know that. I've never had that question before. I'll have to go think about it. A lot of times my clients will say, well, so now that I'm aware of all this, what do I do? And I always say, I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna have to figure that out together because I can't give you a 5 steps like this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it because who knows if that's actually going to work. So we have to work on it together. We gotta figure it out together. Once there's an awareness, once something new comes in, once it's like, okay, here it is, this is the thing, then how do we work with it? And that's a process you have to go through with your client.
What you said with clients saying, now what? Like, what do I do next? And I love that question because for me, sometimes, and this is not always the case, but sometimes like there is nothing to do. We live in such a society, and I feel like it's shifting. It is shifting, but it's a slow, slow shift. But we live in a society where it's do. What
Hmm.
do I need to do? You
Hmm.
go to school, you
Hmm.
do your homework to get the grades. You apply for the university to get the diploma. And that diploma gets you the job, and everything
Hmm.
is an action with an outcome. But, and I feel like a lot of people are starting to realize that certain actions don't necessarily come out with the the result we want. I remember growing up and it was like, okay, you're going to go get a university degree, you're going to get the job you want, and then you're going to get a nice like house with a mortgage, and
Hmm.
then you're going to do this and do that. And then now I'm here in my mid 30s and I don't own a house. I did not get the job I wanted with my university degree. I'm paving my own path. And what I thought how life was going to look like when I was 12, at the age of 35 now, going 36, I would have not guessed this. But being in it, I'm like, this is way better.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting of that process of like do something, get the result. And we were
Hmm.
realizing more and more so that doing said thing doesn't equal that action. And so sometimes you don't need to do anything.
Hmm.
Sometimes just is like sitting back and just allowing the things to unfold in front of you, allowing the realization, the awareness of what you've learned. You don't need to take an action right away. Like there might be an action that comes later on, but maybe now
Hmm.
it's not the time. Maybe
Yeah.
now it's just, I know sometimes if I get triggered of something, there's an awareness. And then obviously the ego wants to be like, okay, like let's do something about it now. Let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
Let's set those boundaries. Let's, post that thing on Instagram or let's launch that program.
Yeah.
But there's times where I'm like, wait, let me just slow down for a sec. Let me
Hmm.
allow this to like sit
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
really get integrated of like, what am I actually learning here? And then what ends up happening, funny enough, is that the same thing that triggered me pops up again. And it could
Hmm.
be a week later, it could be 3 months later. There's no time telling. And then that's when I'm like, oh, now I can take the action I want to take. I can say I
Hmm.
want to say,
Hmm.
I can set the boundaries
Hmm.
that I want to
Hmm.
set.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
can launch the
Hmm.
program.
Hmm.
And it's just
Beautiful.
allowing for it to come when it's meant to come. You don't
Yeah.
need to solve it and fix it and do it
Hmm.
right then on the spot.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, I really hear this like which the way that I see it is to just be and to be in your life, to be in the experiences of your life, and your life will show you what the next action or the next step is. So yeah, that's perfect. And I think that with clients, I always say too that I like to look at it like Shavasana. It's similar to what you're saying, and this allowing and this being is like once we do a yoga practice, we then go into Shavasana so that the body can integrate the practice. So we don't go from the practice to just going into our lives. We take a moment to lay there and relax and let the body really integrate what has just happened. And so I always say, well, now it's time for Shavasana. Now it's time to just be and to be in like you said in the experience of the awareness that you just had, because sometimes they're really big awarenesses, right, where it's like, whoa, I've never seen this before, oh my god, I don't know what to do with myself, this is a lot. And in that it's like, okay, now it's time to just be, it's time to just be in Shavasana and let yourself integrate what it is that you just learned, because your life again will show you what's next. So I love that. And I did remember that what I was going to say in what you were last saying, which was around when you first started to be a coach, you wanted to say the right thing and do the right thing and be the best coach. And I think that gets in the way of actually developing our own wisdom and teachings. So when we want to say the right thing, we're not actually listening to our intuition, which is what you were saying. Like, I just listen to my intuition, and whatever comes through in my intuition is what I deliver, which is perfect. And so when you then think to yourself, I need to say this certain thing, it gets in the way of the intuitive voice, because your intuitive voice drops in and you're like, I can't say that. I've got to say this because this is more perfect. And then you're not actually developing your wisdom. And I think that in that process, we develop a lot of trust. When we're continuously listening to our intuition in a session, we develop trust, this nice relation with our intuition. So then in our lives, we can hear our intuition. We can hear what it is that our higher self or intuitive self or whatever you want to call it is requesting, is asking, is whatever the message is coming through. There's all kinds of ways in which we listen to our intuition. And so I think that when we're in coaching sessions, we really develop that
Yeah.
feel
And I
of,
love that
trust.
you brought that up, because there was a period in my coaching journey that it was a whole year, I think, where I didn't do anything with my coaching business, absolutely nothing. And that was when my spiritual journey started. And that was where I started learning about intuition, and what is my intuition and how does it look like? And then doing that really deep spiritual work and looking at the darkest elements of myself. But it was in the middle, like from when I started then till now, it was in the middle. And so it was like I was going in a different approach with the coaching, and it wasn't working. Like I was constantly hitting walls. And then spiritual journey started, and then completely shifted my coaching practice and how I sit with clients. And now it is really focusing on the listening to them, listening to their like body language, watching them, like seeing in that moment. And like again, it's like it is a practice of being in the moment. It's a practice of being present, of surrendering to what is being shown in front of you. And how can you take those elements? Because the most, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, is that the most like biggest shifts that I've noticed with clients is like in the most subtle things. It's that one sentence they say in their 20-minute ramble. It's that, shift in their posture. It's that, like little twitch in their eye. It's those so subtle. And I always go and I'm like, wait, go back. I'm like, go back. What was this? Wait, what was this thing you said? And then we go deeper and we just unravel something that they didn't even know existed. But that's because I've learned and allowed myself to be present in the moment, be within, and that wouldn't happen if I didn't do my own healing on myself and incorporated those practices in my day-to-day, like not just in my business, but in my relationships, in how, in my community, and how I sit and I be and I do the inner work with myself, and I just allow to be in the present and allow what's meant to come to come.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like in your your time of spiritual practice and growth that you just learn to hold, not even just, it's not a just, it's more of a, and kind of simply, I guess, is that you learn to hold really deep space. Because I think when we learn to hold really deep space, then we can pick up on those little things. Because we're not we are, in session, it's not about us. Even though we're learning and growing, and like we said, it's definitely relational, and so there's a lot of spiritual growth that's happening for ourselves. It's still not about us. It's about the person that's in front of us and holding space for exactly what it is that they're experiencing. And when we can hold that space for exactly what it is that they're experiencing, then we can catch those little pieces, that one sentence, that twinkle in the eye, the things that you're speaking about, because we're paying such close attention. One of my spiritual teachers is Eckhart Tolle, and has been for many, many, many years. And I remember him once saying, like, the best thing that you can do for somebody else, the very best thing, the most healing thing that you can do for somebody else is just to listen.
Mhm.
Listen without saying anything. And I remember when he said that, and he teaches all presence, how to be present. That's his entire, teachings. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this is going to be my first practice of presence. I'm going to sit and I'm just going to listen to what other people have to say, and I'm not going to say anything. And that was when I started to really learn to hold deep space, because that is the way to hold deep space, is to truly listen and listen all the way through until someone's completely done speaking. And then when they're done speaking, you might say something.
Yeah, I love that. And I wanted to know what is, other than that, because that is a beautiful example, but this question, I feel like I want to dive a little deeper with you, is what is one of the things that you learned in the external life, like outside of the, like, your business, like coaching clients, that has now been transferable, that you're able to bring in to the space to guide your clients in a leveled up frequency? Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's probably a lot of them. The thing that's coming up for me right now, which is the thing that I will speak to, is going back to this: what do you want? What are you meant for? I think one of the skills that I really developed within myself is to really understand what is it that I want and what is it that I don't want. And is it something that, and I'll give you an example. I really wanted to be a runner. So when I was young, I was had this, so I was a gymnast, and my coach wasn't very nice, and she was very difficult, very hard on us. And I was the slowest runner on the team. And so she would have the fastest runner on the team run after me around the gym. And if she caught me, I had to do 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups. So I had developed a lot of some mild trauma. I wouldn't say it's, extreme trauma, but mild trauma around running and not being able to run. And it's a family trait. Like, we can't run. We're not good runners. Just not what we are. Our bodies aren't made for that. But at the time, as a young child, I didn't know that. I just thought there was something wrong with me and that I needed to learn to run faster. And so I would have these dreams that somebody was chasing me and I couldn't move. I was like stuck. And so as I got to college, I decided that well, actually in eighth grade, I was decided that I was going to run the mile in, I don't know, 10 minutes or something, which is like really, really long time for a mile. My kids could run it in like 7.5 or something. But that was my goal. And so I did, and I got most improved in eighth grade. My PE teacher gave me most improved certificate. So that was one step to being like, okay. Then I got to college and I took a running class, and I decided I wanted to run 3 miles in 30 minutes. So that was 10 miles a minute, but consistently doing it. And I made that goal. And so when I would dream after that, after college, I would have dreams about running. I could run so fast in my dreams. I could hop fences. Like, it was great. So I knew that I had healed this part of me, but there was still a part of me that wanted and was jealous of, like, the marathon runners and those that could just like run and run and run. And so I found myself after college still having a running practice, and I didn't like it. Like, it was not fun for me. And so there was like this drive to, like, okay, I'm gonna be a runner, I'm gonna do this, until I realized that I don't like this. I don't like this. This isn't really what I want. This isn't me. It's not meant for me. And when I realized that, I stopped running. And I don't run. I don't run. Like, I'll run to chase something or something, but I don't run as a practice. And so that skill is something I have used over and over and over, is, do I really want this? Do I really want this? Or is this something that I think that I want? And is this really meant for me? Like, is this how my mind works? Is this how I am in my body? Is this how my body works? Because we're all so unique and different. And to really be able to identify that, I think for me and for my clients, what I found is it makes for the happiest life, when the most content life, when we really know ourselves. So when someone says, now, do you want to do it? Oh, I'm doing this marathon. You want to do it with me? I say, nope, I don't know what to do. I'm so happy for you. And I will cheer you on and be so excited for you. But this is not me. It's not meant for me. It's not for me. It's not who I am. If you want to do a meditation challenge, now that's great. I could totally do that. And
Yeah.
I'm down to do that. But no running challenges for me. So I think that's the thing that's really coming up for me right now.
I love that. And that goes hand in hand with being unconventional. It's being strong within yourself and knowing yourself. And I feel like those two, like knowing what you want, what you don't want, what is right for you and what is not. And that is like kind of like the minute you figure that out, then you do take these unconventional steps. And for those who are listening, like if you are not an entrepreneur or a coach, but you're just like diving into this topic, unconventional can be in so many other ways. It can be in so many things in your day to day, how your relationship gets started. It can be like how you navigate your relationship. You may not navigate it the way everybody else around you, or it could be the hobbies or things that you do that maybe where you're living, nobody else is doing what you're doing. And there's just so many ways, but to get through the unconventional is to have within yourself to know what you want, what you don't want, to know truly and to continue to check in because things you are allowed to change and you are allowed to say, well, now I don't want this anymore. And so just continue checking in because, you're you and you're going to be changing and growing and shifting and sometimes things are going to not be what you thought you wanted and that's okay and to allow that grace for yourself. And so to wrap it up, one more question. What for someone who wants to take that unconventional approach, for someone who wants to do the thing that not everybody else is doing, and there may be some fear, some hesitation, what would be your guidance that you can offer them?
There's always going to be fear. Fear is always going to be present. So my guidance would be to get to know your fear, understand your fear, befront your fear, because it's going to continue to show up and you just can't let it get in the way. So what I always be like, oh yeah, I see you. I hear you. I know you're here and I'm going to do it anyways. So that's what I would say is get to know your fear. This is also getting to know yourself. Get to know yourself in a way that is you have a deep understanding of who you are and keep doing that. And so whatever those fears are, your fears are the things in your mind that stop you from doing what you really want to do. And so they can look like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not or that actually like or you might have anxiety like all real body anxiety that comes up where you can feel it in your body where you start to go like like I can't do that. That's a fear. So get to know that, get to know what those are for yourself and and do it anyways and go with it anyways. And the other thing that I will say, which is a little bit of a side note, is that when you're getting to know yourself, look at who your ancestors are and how they were, who they are, what are their stories. It will be very helpful in informing who you are and also your small self, your young self. Get to know, remember who she or he was because they were full of joy. They didn't have all the fears and the limiting beliefs that are present as you get older. We develop those over time. They live in our subconscious mind from our life. And so when we go back to our young child, we can really understand who we are from that aspect as well. So I think it's really important to go into history to learn about who we are at present time and then what we want moving forward.
I love that. I love both of those. They are both beautiful. Even looking at your ancestors or your parents, your grandparents, like their stories. Like I know my grandfather, he wanted to marry my grandmother. His family wouldn't approve. So he was like, screw you. Married her anyways, left an aristocratic family in Greece, and he moved to Canada. And it was just like, wow, if he could do that, and that's unconventional.
I was just gonna say that's where you're unconvinced. That's where that aspect of him lives inside of you. So it makes a lot of sense as to why you're doing what you're doing and why you're living an unconventional life and why you chose to do different things than other people were doing. And so when we know that, we can go like, oh, this is actually who I am. Like, of course, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And he had fears, and you are going to have them too. And but you can go back to be like, my grandpa is literally his blood is inside of me. You know, his bones are inside of me. I am the oldest ancestor of my ancestry history. So now I can say, this is where I came from. And that's why I am the way that I am.
Exactly. I love it. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, so much for being here. And I want you to just tell the audiences where they can find you. What do you have going on? How can they tap into your world? And yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. So you can mostly find me on Instagram. That's probably where I'm most active. It's at Shauna, Shaunan, and then Lay, Lay. And you can also find me on Facebook. I'm just not as active on Facebook. And then I have a website, and that's www.shauna, Shauna, lay.com. So just my name. What I do have happening in coming up really soon is a retreat called The Spark. I'm doing this retreat with my dear friend Stevie Greenwell, and it's February 6th through the 9th, so it's over a long weekend. And we're looking at dreams, desires, and visions. We're looking at what it is that you actually are meant for from the heart space, and really courting the dream, kind of like what you were talking about when you said like to sit with something. You know, we want to do like something comes in, it's like I want to do it right away. This is about sitting with it, courting it, and sort of going on a date with your dream vision or desires, and writing a love letter to them, and also pampering yourself as you go through the process of bringing the vision through. And so that's going to be over a long weekend, and it's around Imbolc, which is a cross-border holiday. And so we'll be doing that. And then I have sacred communication for partners, which is something that I teach during this time of year. And that is all about how to communicate in a very healthy way with your partner so that you can develop a really strong relationship. And so that's also coming up. So those are the two things I've got going on.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for being here. I am going to include all this information in the show notes. So for those of you who are listening while driving, didn't have a chance, just go down to show notes and you can find how to connect with Shauna over there. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely a wonderful conversation. I had so much fun. We dove on so many different topics, but
Mhm.
kept in the theme of unconventionality, which I love. And that is all. So thank you for those listening. Thank you to Shauna, and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.